Muito boa tarde a todos. Primeiro, agradecer à organização pelo convite. É a primeira vez.
Purposes of translation, we have devices available. Please reach any of our technicians at the back. Raise your hand as a matter of fact, and they'll come to you with a translation device. 1 is for English, 2 is for French, 3 is for Portuguese, and 4 is for Arabic. Alhamdulillah. Please.
Obrigado. É a primeira vez que venho ao Ghana e para apresentar, falar um bocado de um projeto que é transnacional e que faz referência ao que temos estado a falar aqui, que é basicamente investir e integrar se me puderem ajudar aqui na apresentação. Ok. Ok. Pronto. Eu não ia falar muito relativamente à questão do corredor, porque o vídeo já mostra muito dos detalhes que aqui foram falados. Relativamente, até por questões de economia de tempo, eu ia focar-me neste slide, para as pessoas perceberem a vantagem do corredor de Lobito e o tempo que leva usando o corredor relativamente aos outros corredores disponíveis. Depois, dar nota que por causa de todo este processo de corredor, criou-se essa agência que acaba por ser um processo de integração entre 3 países, nomeadamente o Congo, onde o nosso corredor está ligado, e a Zâmbia, onde iremos fazer uma ligação que compreende uma extensão de 800 km, que será financiado por várias instituições multilaterais e também a ser coordenado pelo AFC. Aqui podemos ver a integração e a coordenação, a parceria relativamente a este corredor. Este é o trajeto que vai ser financiado na ordem dos 4 bilhões de dólares para podermos então ligar até Xingola, na Zâmbia. E a partir daí temos a conexão com o corredor de Tazara, que passa por Zâmbia e Tanzânia ao porto de Dar es Salaam. Aqui, dar uma breve panorâmica do potencial do corredor. Nós olhamos só para a questão externa, que é o Copper Belt, mas também temos um potencial interno, e aqui deixar o convite para os vários investidores que, se tiverem todo o interesse em participar do corredor do Lobito, nós estamos abertos para trocarmos impressões, fazer aqui um B2B e podermos programar até visitas para perceberem o potencial do corredor. Isto também mostra o potencial agrícola, além do potencial mineiro que o corredor tem. Isto é basicamente detalhes de infraestruturas e são questões técnicas que depois podemos falar num outro momento. Aqui, a ligação existente hoje do corredor com o Congo, Kolwezi. A linha férrea sai de Angola e para em Kolwezi. De Luau a Kolwezi são 400 km de linha e nós trazemos tudo o que é metais raros e minérios da zona de Kolwezi pelo corredor de Lobito. Pronto. Depois, muito rapidamente, dizer que nós, no corredor, integramos também o terminal, quer mineraleiro e quer o multipurpose, ou multiusos, que foi concessionado à Africa Global Logistics. E aí nós temos toda a cadeia já com o setor privado, onde os financiamentos que são feitos já não têm impacto com o orçamento do Estado e o Estado basicamente dá o suporte a todos esses investidores e pode usar recursos para avançar noutros projetos que também para nós são prioritários e muito rapidamente eu depois passarei aqui e farei uma provocação de 3 projetos que são extremamente importantes e que também terão o mesmo propósito, que é conectividade, integração e investimento. Muito rapidamente, este é o próximo corredor que nós vamos lançar o concurso nos próximos 3 meses. Vai ser um concurso internacional também, e aqui chamar a atenção do potencial deste corredor. O corredor do Namibe é um corredor interno, mas que o plano é a extensão até a fronteira com a Namíbia, em Santa Clara, e depois estender até ao Rivungo, já na fronteira com a Zâmbia, que é a zona de Victoria Falls. É um corredor que tem também um potencial elétrico, potencial este que depois também poderemos mobilizar financiamento privado para toda a questão de eletrificação da linha e mesmo até para o fornecimento de energia às sociedades mineiras que normalmente gastam 30% em custos operacionais com o combustível. E aqui nós temos a garantia de off-takers até para a parte de energia. Isto é o potencial mineiro e está hoje a acontecer várias concessões ao longo deste corredor, vários minérios, desde terras raras, lítio, ouro, diamantes, níquel, cobalto, etc. E depois temos um porto que está a ser terminado, que vai ser inaugurado este ano, que vai servir também de integração neste corredor, nomeadamente o terminal mineraleiro do Sacomar, e esta vai ser a ideia do futuro terminal. Teremos um terminal mineraleiro e um terminal de contentores que nós estamos a expandir. E também será feita a sua concessão e aí apelar ao setor privado para participarem deste projeto que também para nós é estruturante. Um terceiro é o terminal de águas profundas do Caio em Cabinda. Está nesta fase de execução, nós em princípio terminaremos este projeto em novembro e a ideia é concessionar este terminal de águas profundas e desenvolver a Zona Franca numa área de 500 hectares. Esta Zona Franca terá a particularidade de servir o setor petrolífero e não só, porque Cabinda tem muito potencial a nível da madeira, do ouro e do agronegócio, além da questão do setor petrolífero. E aqui também deixar um apelo aos investidores, porque é um projeto que pode ser gerido por um grupo ou um consórcio africano com capacidade para o efeito. Aqui uma ideia de como é que será o projeto, a Zona Franca. Cabinda tem também particularidades a nível de taxas muito atraentes. Nós temos um regime especial em Cabinda e então o VAT é 2%, contrariamente a toda a região do país, que são 14%. Depois, por fim, e já para terminar, o novo aeroporto internacional Dr. António Agostinho Neto. Foi inaugurado há 2 anos, está em operação de forma gradual. Temos hoje operações já com ligação a Kinshasa e depois, as domésticas também já estão em curso e depois vamos passar gradualmente para as ligações com o Médio Oriente e a Europa e a América do Sul. Dizer que este aeroporto foi projetado para 15 milhões de passageiros. Vamos ter, em finais de julho, o resultado do operador final, que fizemos um concurso público para a sua concessão e também cada vez mais queremos envolver o setor privado. Mas o grande desafio está aqui, que é a cidade aeroportuária. E isto é um projeto que nós desenvolvemos aqui, um master plan com a Foster & Partners, para desenvolver a cidade aeroportuária. E aqui o Estado terá apenas o papel ou responsabilidade da infraestrutura de base e aqui convidar os privados para as várias oportunidades que poderão ter dentro da cidade aeroportuária, numa área de 16 mil hectares. Pronto. De forma generalizada, era isso que queríamos apresentar, Corredor de Lobito e mais uns projetos. Corredor de Lobito, como é o flagship project de Angola hoje, é um projeto que criou uma expectativa muito grande e nós contamos com todos para poderem fazer parte deste projeto, que para nós não é um projeto de Angola, é um projeto da África, é um projeto transnacional. Obrigado.
Thank you very much, Mario. Probably most of us, or some of us, couldn't follow the French rendition, but the slides and the writings, I think, did help. And so we very much appreciate the context that you have set for this evening's discussion. So basically, the efforts at Africa integration must be transported from one point to another. It needs movement. Movement from concept to implementation. Movement from ambition to action. But more importantly, from the slides presented by Mario, people must be able to move within the continent. So must goods and services. Transport and logistics therefore become imperative. I believe we can appreciate the vision behind the establishment of the Black Star shipping line by Kwame Nkrumah decades ago, as well as the Ghana Airways. And other countries did the same. But the momentum was not sustained. Today, we talk about deficits. We see the Lobito corridor development example, which is an attempt to close the infrastructure gap when it comes to transport and logistics. But how big is the deficit that we talk about when we are looking at transport and logistics within Africa as a vehicle for African integration? How big is the deficit? What valuation can we put on it, Claude?
That's a tough question. So I'm Claude Aman. I'm the managing director for Africa Global Logistics in Ghana. The challenges start right from the exit of our workshop. I would say, the potholes, they just started right at the exit of the workshop, right at the moment that then the trucks come outside the workshop. And all along their journey to, let's take an example in Ghana, all along the journey to Burkina Faso, if they want to go to Bobo Dioulasso, for instance, I will be very practical, okay? When you speak to the drivers and when you want them to share their ideas about how to fix the problems that they encountered every day, they will tell you, boss, when I'm going to Burkina Faso, Bobo Dioulasso, as from Techiman, there is a lot of problems because there is no roads. And it's not only in Techiman, but from Techiman to Hamale, it's like 400 or 500 kilometers. There are no roads, no proper roads. This is an example in Ghana, but I've been working in Africa in some countries, and we are encountering this kind of problems, and the gap is very huge. I can value it, but it's they said here before our panel, they said that the gap of financing infrastructure is about 68 billions to 140 billions. And if you want to build modern highways, from Tema to Burkina Faso, it will take you at least 10 to 11 billions. So it means that you can divide this 140 billion by 10, and you will see that how to value the gap between the needs on the ground in the field and the reality, I would say. That's my point.
Thank you, Claude. I will come to you, Mr. Aholu. And so the entire infrastructure deficit, it's pegged at somewhere topping 140 billion. As Claude said, difficult to put a value on what can be assigned to transport and logistics. But how did we come here? How did we get here? How did we accrue this huge deficit? Where were our leaders?
Okay, well, let me introduce myself first. My name is Stanley Aholu. I'm the CEO of Prime Meridian Docks, a company that is project developing for maritime infrastructure here in Ghana. I'm also a maritime lawyer by profession. And so much of what I would say, understandably, would be in relation to the maritime sector, which is, for me, a very important part of the transport network that is required if we want to get where we want to get to. Now, in terms of the question you asked, how did we get here? We've been here for a very long time, and we haven't actually paid attention to the things we need to pay attention to. Put it bluntly, we haven't put our money where our mouth is. I mean, the transport system we have in Africa, in reference to the maritime sector as an example, is essentially colonial. It is structured so as to extract raw materials by way of exports, and then also to bring in manufactured products into the continent, which we heavily rely on. Ghana, you know, I say Africa is a giant supermarket for other people's goods. We're importing almost virtually everything we consume, and we're exporting what we have raw. And in doing that, we've managed to maintain a system that focuses on ports. And ports are simply a way of actually just getting in goods and getting them out. To put it bluntly, I mean, the statistics show for Ghana, for example, we have about 60 to 70% of our tax revenue, which is dependent upon our two ports only. And that should tell you how dependent we are on this colonial, transport system, maritime transport system, essentially to take goods out and bring manufactured goods in. But, you would understand that when we talk about maritime transportation and logistics, it's not only about ports. The value chain is quite wide. And we have focused on ports to the detriment of the other aspects of that network. Now, the result of this is that we are not connected in Africa. Thankfully, we have AFCFTA as an opportunity, which we should pay particular attention to. But AFCFTA is not going to work if we do not put money into building the transport or maritime transport infrastructure. Africa is trading among itself about 16% That's all we're doing. We build ports that are competing with each other but are not connected. to our production centers and our markets. And the ports we have are actually functioning for the benefit of multilateral or the global trade to the detriment of Africa's trade and prosperity. I think that that's where we are, bluntly, because of neglect. We've maintained a system that is not working for Africa, essentially.
Thank you, Stanley. And I'll come to you, Johnny. When you read literature on Africa's infrastructure deficit, one word that keeps repeating itself is complexities. That Africa's infrastructure deficit is complex. And it repeats itself when you're also looking at issues of transport and logistics because of movement across borders and all that. What, in your opinion, is it that can be done in order to simplify the complexities?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. My name is John Chimadeni. I'm from Namibia, and I represent the Africa Practice Group that was mentioned by my last friend, that is African breed. Now, I'm emphasizing on African breed because I want to say that the African problems must be solved, must be given African solutions, because sometimes we look too far without understanding the dynamics within the African context. When I listened to the presentation, it's a very good initiative. And over the years, when we have these dialogues, we do talk about free trade and free movement of goods between African countries. And it's a dialogue that we've been having for a very long time. I think we have come to a point now that we need to implement those initiatives that we have put in place. And where do we start? We start by talking to one another by having bilateral agreement among ourselves, so that when we, like Namibia is a very close ally to Angola, because Namibia shares direct borders with Angola. And Namibia also have a duty to other countries that are landlocked to transport their goods through the Warfish Bay port. Now when you have that, it's a starting point to have the conversation to say that as Namibia, how do we expand the port so that it can accommodate those cargoes and logistic services that come from other countries that are landlocked? So those are the conversations that we need to have. And for us to have this conversation, we need to be intentional and deliberate about it to say that what do we want to achieve? And for me, if you look at the deficit really is to come together and put our plans that which we structured already and put it in place. That's really the starting point. Otherwise, we'll be talking about all these good initiatives, and if we don't put it into action, we don't talk to one another, the countries are not having bilateral agreement, and we need to develop our own standards that connect to say that if I'm building a railway from Namibia crossing to Botswana, the standard should be the same so that there's a collaboration between the two.
Thank you, Johnny. Clearly, the issues present challenges, they present opportunities, and when Mario, you were doing your presentation, there was a clear example of an attempt to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are thrown up as a result of the situation in which we find ourselves. I see the Lobito example as one that, and as you stated in the slide, is targeted and also supported the landlocked countries within the sub-region by coming together, pooling resources, and developing those ports and other facilities that can support landlocked countries. What are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities?
Ok, obrigado. Bem, nós temos várias oportunidades e eu penso que as oportunidades não podem só ser vistas do lado angolano, porque o corredor de Lobito hoje é um projeto que integra dois países, mais dois países. E então as oportunidades começam onde começa a linha férrea, nomeadamente a partir de Kolwezi, hoje, até o Lobito. desde plataformas logísticas, desde desenvolver a indústria, o agronegócio e também, por causa deste projeto do corredor, hoje há uma iniciativa privada que é o lançamento de uma linha de transmissão de energia que vai ligar ao interconector da Zâmbia e, via corredor de Lobito, poder-se vender energia. E isto também com o setor privado. Temos, naturalmente, o envolvimento, por exemplo, do corredor de Lobito, amiga do Banco Mundial, que está a trabalhar connosco por causa da questão das garantias, e então cada vez mais olhamos para oportunidades em que o setor privado, ao longo do corredor, que estamos a desenvolver um master plan, precisamente para que os investimentos sejam feitos de forma assertiva e termos uma agência que facilita, e essa agência que foi criada, o seu quartel-general é no Lobito e é uma presidência rotativa. 3 anos Angola, até 2027, depois será o Congo. Então, a questão dos investimentos não vão estar só concentrados na parte angolana. Então, as oportunidades hão de surgir falando com todas as contrapartes. Então, o corredor de Lobito tem essa vantagem por ser um projeto já a nível africano. Obrigado.
Thank you very much. So you took us through some of the challenges, and then you delve into the Lobito example and how it is helping to solve some of those challenges. But Stanley, from the maritime perspectives where you have great expertise, if you are asked to offer a 3-point solution to African integration from the perspective of maritime infrastructure or maritime transportation, what will your 3-point solution be?
Thank you very much. I think the framework, let me begin by saying that the framework for dealing with our transportation challenges, it's in fact the AFCFTA single market. And I'll get back to that. But there's been a lot said already as far as the maritime sector is concerned. There's been a lot of work and pronouncement from a policy point of view that has been talked about and said. And Dr. Zuma is here, and I'm lucky to have been, when she was chair of the AU, I was lucky to have been invited to her house in Addis Ababa when she was launching the AIM strategy. She did a lot of work on the maritime strategy for Africa because she understood that he who rules the oceans rules the world. And the cheapest and most sustainable form of transportation is, in fact, maritime transportation. And by maritime transportation, I'm talking about, efficiently, safely, and sustainably moving goods and people across the continent, and moving goods from production centers or feedstock areas to market. And this is how we're going to grow Africa. And so I think that, under the AFCFTA, there's a lot of work already that has been done to create the framework for that to happen. I think Africa is fragmented. Everybody knows that in terms of the legal framework or legislation and regulation needed to actually have a homogeneous transport system that allows for the prosperity of Africa. So that's number one. We need that regulation across board. And the way to do this is something that, has been said, is a system. We have to create a market for local ships, local transportation by way of the sea and inland waters. And this will be reserved for Africa. And this is focused on movement of African goods and people. And this is different from long-haul transportation of goods into Africa and out of Africa. So until we do that, in some places it's called a cabotage regime. A cabotage regime, and just for your information, as of today, the United States of America is enhancing its age-old cabotage laws to ensure that they reserve local maritime transportation to Americans and have a transportation system that serves the American economy. And so we need to focus on that. And so that's one way to look at it. And then de-risk that market, if you like, to allow for private involvement and participation without the private sector actually getting involved in that market, which will be delineated by legislation and regulation. We are not going anywhere far. The policy is there, the legislation, fragmented legislation, country from country are all there, but we need to harmonize all of this under the AFCFTA's legal regime to be able to achieve that. But that cabotage regime is essential for Africa's maritime transportation and success. Thank you.
So strong private participation, strong local participation as well. Claude, the logistics sector, what baby steps are required in order to ensure that it provides the required support for Africa's integration?
Thank you. As my brother said, the regulatory framework is the first step we should work on. We should harmonize our policies. There are plenty of workshops at dialogues that have been discussed about this topic, but nothing practical has been put in place so far. To me, the first thing to be dealt with is the policies harmonization. We should harmonize our policies when it comes to trading, when it comes to people movement. That's the first point. The second point is about the corridor development approach that our PIDA is working on. At each border, you have 2 posts. And they have started working on one-stop border posts in East Africa, and they are doing well. And what I heard from this experience is that movements are going faster. And the second step for me is to reinforce this one-stop border posts into our borders. The third point I would say is about the roads, our roads. I'll come back to the roads. We should have a plan to maintain the roads. Unfortunately, we build highways and we let them deteriorate, unfortunately. And we should work at maintaining them for their lifespan, for a better lifespan. And because we've already did this investment, okay? And we should not let them, I would say, deteriorate it like this. That's my 3 points for my 3 steps to improve the logistics network.
Okay. Johnny, in the strange world in which we are, where we are virtually being overwhelmed by technology, and at times strange ones at that, what will you say is the role of technology and innovation in resolving the challenges around transport and logistics?
Yeah, very good. Because one aspect of improving free trade through logistics is definitely infrastructures, physical infrastructures. But the other challenge really is the services. I always see a lot of trucks coming from Zambia with a copper through to the port of Walfish Bay to be shipped out. But that infrastructure is there. The road network between Namibia and Zambia exists. But there is a challenge because the goods remain too long at the border. There is no collaboration between the two countries. So there is a need then to establish a sort of a one-stop border, which is rather digitized, so that one can make your booking wherever you are, or so the two countries can talk to each other, because having infrastructure is very, very good. But then if you don't put those infrastructures, those services in place, it creates a bit of a gap. The other thing that one can look into digitizing is that is the issue of security as well. There's a high component, in as much as we emphasize on putting all these trade agreements in place. We also have to build confidence among each other, among different African nations. And for us to do that, I must be able to know that when I transport my consignment from wherever it comes, is secure. So there's really a need for that digital interoperability system that enable you to see your consignment from the end and to where it comes from. So as we are moving in this digital space, I think we can then embrace those innovations so that you can make trade much, much easier. Because if you only focus on infrastructure, we may miss out on those type of services.
Thank you, Johnny. Mario, in your slides, I saw that mining stood out very prominently in terms of how transport and logistics can support the mining sector across countries and within the continent. Beyond mining, I am not sure if I saw any other sector. So what are the other sectors that stand to benefit from an efficient transport and logistics service within the continent?
On Lobito, for example, the agro-business is one of the sectors. Peço desculpa a ir para o inglês. O Lobito é um dos... o setor agrícola, por exemplo, nós hoje temos um projeto muito interessante no corredor de Lobito, que é uma plataforma logística, que fizemos um acordo com uma empresa holandesa, que é a Flying Swans, em que eles fazem a recolha de 6 frutas tropicais a todos os produtores à volta. Este é o plano. E depois, na mesma plataforma, o objetivo é a conservação, a calibração e exportar para a União Europeia. Então, há aqui, além da questão mineira, há também o negócio da madeira hoje, que também está a ser muito procurado ao longo do corredor. Então, há várias oportunidades nesse sentido. Também a questão da fibra óptica, a questão das telecomunicações. O corredor hoje tem uma extensão de 1.344 quilómetros, do Lobito ao Luau. E então foi passada toda a fibra óptica e hoje há provedores de serviços de telecomunicações que pretendem explorar a fibra para servir todas as províncias que passam ou regiões que passam, onde passa o corredor. Então eu penso que os primeiros passos foram dados e agora é tudo uma questão em cadeia. Começam a surgir outras atividades conexas, outras oportunidades. E, como disse, aquilo deixa de ser um corredor ferroviário e é um corredor de desenvolvimento. E aí as oportunidades são nos vários setores. Queria só dar uma nota, por exemplo, dessa parceria que nós temos com o Congo e a Zâmbia. Hoje, o porto do Lobito tem um espaço que será reservado como dry dock para a Zâmbia e o Congo. Precisamente quando usarem o corredor, as suas mercadorias poderem ficar no porto. E então, já nesse acordo, também há um espaço já dedicado para eles. Então, eu penso que aqui o corredor de Lubita acaba por ser um exemplo que não devemos caminhar sozinhos. Temos que caminhar juntos, temos que pensar de forma integrada, um plano diretor africano ou regional em que tudo o que é infraestruturas consigam estar integradas para termos benefício e, naturalmente, olhar para o setor privado, porque o Estado não tem capacidade para fazer tudo. E aí temos aí muitos fundos de investimento, o futuro em África, e o que nós temos que fazer é preparar bem os projetos, as condições precedentes, para podermos apresentar projetos bancáveis, principalmente para esses investidores, porque há muito dinheiro no mundo, só que é preciso ter os estudos, todo esse processo pronto para investir e criar um bom ambiente de negócios. E o corredor quer fazer isso, esse projeto, e eu acho que é um bom exemplo para toda a África relativamente a isso. Obrigado.
Mercy. Stanley, when it comes to the aviation sector, Ethiopian Airlines today stands out as a stellar example. Any comparator within maritime, either currently or looking into the future? What is happening within that space?
Well, the Ethiopian Airways, I'm not qualified to talk about Ethiopian Airways, but I think that there's, first of all, the investment, there's quite a bit of investment in what they do. And also, it's run commercially. This is not something that suffers, if I'm not mistaken, the inefficiencies of the public sector, ways in which things are managed. And so if there's any success there, it has to be, that there's investment and then there's management of the business in a way that, is efficient. I think, the maritime sector has been quite left in the domain of government. And it hasn't worked very much to our benefit. I think that, the private sector, as I indicated earlier, the private sector has to be attracted to that sector, especially given that it's essential to the movement, the most cost-efficient movement of goods and people across the continent for the prosperity of the continent. It has to be invested in. We need to attract private sector investment and private sector efficiencies. I'm saying this from a point of view of having been 10 years trying to raise money myself to develop foundational infrastructure for the maritime sector here in Ghana, which of course it's a sub-regional infrastructure. And in that process, it is clear to me that the attention of capital in the direction is not what it should be. And it should take private sector entrepreneurs and innovators to help de-risk that sector, to attract the necessary capital to be able to develop it, and then to manage the services, in order to be able to make the sector work for us. And so if there's any comparison between Ethiopian Airlines, which apparently is working successfully, and then what is happening in the maritime sector, I think that the maritime sector is over-focused on public sector operatives. It is also not attracting the right capital. I think it's heavily concentrated on ports. And I think what the Lobito corridor or project represents is a very good one, but I'm hoping also that the Lobito corridor project doesn't become a railway connecting the mines in DRC simply to the port, and which is basically the colonial superstructure of extracting raw material out of the continent. And I hope that is not the case, but that is a situation where we are trying to get, feedstock from areas where Africa has them in abundance to production centers in Africa, and then move them to markets in Africa, first and foremost, in order to actually achieve intra-African trade. And that is the way Africa prospers.
All right. Go ahead, Mario.
Queria só dar aqui uma nota relativamente à questão do setor marítimo e até fazer uma provocação ao colega do lado esquerdo. Angola tem 1.650 quilômetros de costa marítima. E nós estamos com um desafio agora que é alavancar a cabotagem do norte ao sul, 1.650 quilômetros. E eu penso, e o corredor do Lobito, por exemplo, no porto do Lobito, nós já estamos a desenvolver um terminal de cabotagem, precisamente porque queremos fazer e maximizar esse processo. E eu acredito que podemos depois até falar um bocadinho sobre isso, porque queremos também trazer investidores para este projeto, que é a cabotagem ao longo da costa. Obrigado.
Thank you. Johnny, will it be safe to say that AFTA can serve as a catalyst for improving upon transportation within Africa and between African countries? Can we safely say that the concept of AFTA, when implemented, can serve as a catalyst for efficiency in transportation that supports Africa integration?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely there's a higher benefit or advantage to have effective infrastructures across the African globe. And one key component is that I think it was mentioned earlier by the previous speakers when they're saying that in as much as you are building good infrastructures, we must look into maintaining them as well, so that once they are maintained, we'll be able to trade effectively. But key aspect is the legal framework that was mentioned earlier as well, that have to be in place. And once you have your legal framework in place, have a good formation of bilateral agreement, have a standard protocol on how to maintain and use these infrastructures. It's also very important to know, now that we have these infrastructures, who owns them? Is it owned by the individual countries? Is it owned by a regional bloc within Africa? Or is it owned by those ones that are putting money in to put up those infrastructures? That conversation has to be clear, so that you don't create a lot of restrictions on the usage of the trade. Because sometimes we get into PPPs, or we get to borrow money somewhere else, and then you have a list of restrictions of items that you can transport, or things that you can move to which country. That creates also a barrier. And also, lastly, I want to say that there's also a need for political will, because once you put up infrastructures, they need to be supported continuously, regardless of what the government of the day is. That is something that we need to incorporate in our strategy as well.
Sorry, Stanley, please.
Yeah, so just to add something to this, because this the AFCFTA is extremely important as far as I'm concerned. And most recently, the AFCFTA organized a session, a consultative session in Lome to discuss how a legal framework for transportation under the AFCFT can be progressed. And I think that was a very good initiative, which I participated in. And I think it's important that, you know, the continental transport, we have to begin to look at transport from a continental standpoint, not from parochial national interest points of view only. And so that you would have an integrated policy under the AFCFTA. You would also have a regulatory harmonized regime across board. And then also you have incentive packages, especially in relating to the maritime sector. I believe that Africa's competitive advantage in the maritime or shipping is short sea shipping, not long haul shipping. Long haul shipping, that boat has left long. We cannot compete in that sector. I think we can only compete in short sea shipping and inland waterways. That's our competitive advantage. And the way to do that is under AFCFTA, a regulatory regime that harmonizes across board, delineates a market for short sea shipping, also creates incentives across market to allow for local participation and local ownership of ships. I think that's the way to go. So AFCFTA is the right framework. I think that's a major opportunity for all transport sectors. I think the point needs to be made quite emphatically that AFCFTA creates the right opportunity for us to harmonize our transport.
So that's the Pan-African initiative. It is in that context that I'll come to you, Claude, and ask about the Program for Infrastructure Development for Africa, which is an initiative of African leaders in order to speedily develop Africa's infrastructure. Any hope for us in that?
Well, what I would like to say to add on what my predecessors said is that after and the PIDA, they are both working together. After as to put in place the, let's say, the soft matters, like policies, regulatory, the non-barrier tariffs, working on the single windows, etc., and the rules of origin. After works on these topics, and the PIDA works on the hard ones, you know, the rails, the roads, the bridges, the transmission lines, and they are doing well. The last report, they say the 10-year report that they released recently showed that they are doing well. 40% of what they expect to do by 2014 have been achieved in terms of modern highways. It's roughly the same when it comes to railways and transmission line. So these two initiatives, AFTA and PIDA, are very important for the prosperity of Africa. Working together, one on the soft matters and the other on the hard matters, we will go to prosperity. Yeah.
Thank you very much. At this stage, I think I will invite one or two comments from participants on the floor. I believe there's a microphone going round. If you have a microphone, just show by hand. Yes. Yes. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Toma Imire. I would want to agree with what Stanley was saying. Look, we need to get our strategy for Pan-African transport connectivity for goods right. And getting it right means using maritime. Look, if you build a road from Accra to Nairobi and say you want to now haul goods by truck, it's going to take you longer than if you were hauling those goods to the moon. We all know that even in ECOWAS, does had a trade liberalization scheme for so long now. Any exporter from Ghana will tell you how difficult it is moving his goods between borders by road. Now, similar example, you want to ship cocoa products company chocolate to Nigeria. You put in a truck and start heading for Nigeria. You're going to meet about 20 checkpoints. There's going to be immigration, customs, and all of them. So many of them would not even listen to what you're arguing about the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. Now imagine if you are shipping that thing all the way to Kenya, where crossing countries that don't have any such arrangements. Put it in a ship. When it leaves Terra, the place where the next point of call is where it's going to be offloaded. It eliminates the problems of so many checkpoints.
Good.
So what you do is rather than build a Trans-Africa highway, you build roads from the ports across the continent to the landlocked countries inside.
All right, Thomas. Point well made. Thank you very much. There's a lady's hand here. Yes. Name?
Thank you. I'm Victoria Odum. We spoke of roads, airways, maritime. What of our railways? This is for Africa, but I'm a Ghanaian. I'm asking, what of our railways?
Yeah.
Traffic congestions everywhere because everyone wants to own a car. When you get a job opportunity in Tema and you are in Accra, because of traffic congestion, you have to compulsory rent over there or you become a squatter at Tema. But if we have trains are faster, the capacity to carry goods and human is far higher than cars. So it seems our focus is more on the maritime, the roads. I plead with our top-notch, the honorable members, the investors, let's look at that side.
All right, Victoria. Thank you very much. Any other? Let me first look this way. On this side, yes. I'll come to you later.
Okay, good evening. My name is Owusu Apia. I'm the founder and CEO of Crusaders of Change for Environmental Sustainability in Africa. I think whilst we are discussing about the roads and railway line and other transportation sector, one thing I would like to plead with you is that I see that in Ghana here, most of our major roads has now tend to be like potholes, manholes, and some other stuff, creating a lot of accidents. Because every single day, not only in Ghana, but within the continent of Africa. So I am pleading with you that sometimes it costs like 1.2 million Ghana cedis to construct 1 kilometer road. So assuming if it's like 20 or 30 or 50 kilometers, and the road takes us like maybe less than 2 years, and it tends to be like potholes. It seems like every single day we have to be on the same problem. I see that we cannot develop as a continent. So all these are some of the things I am pleading with you that when you get the opportunity to meet the leaders or the leadership in Africa, you should tell them some of these things because it is affecting all of us.
Point well made. Thank you very much. I'll take the last two. One from here and one from there. There was a hand here, am I right? Otherwise? Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Je vais m'exprimer en français. Voilà. Je m'appelle Nzanzu Katia, je viens de la RDC. Et ma préoccupation est par rapport au fait que nous avons parlé des infrastructures routières, mais nous n'avons pas beaucoup parlé des personnes qui allaient utiliser ces infrastructures routières, c'est-à-dire le chauffeur qui devra faire plus de 3 000, 5 000 kilomètres sur la route. Qu'en est-il de ce monsieur? Où pourra-t-il lui-même se reposer et reprendre des forces pour continuer la route? Et l'autre point sur lequel j'aimerais avoir une réponse, c'est par rapport à la traçabilité de ces marchandises qui vont emprunter ces différents corridors. Merci.
Okay, good evening.
Please go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Jonas. I work for a company that supports seagoing vessels and also long journey transportation haulage companies with fuels. And I'm glad to see Stanley and Claude here. According to reports, Africa is the second largest land space after China. And OECD also reports that in the next 25 years, we'll have at least 1.6 billion young people here on this continent. And we have 54 countries in Africa, with 16 of them being landlocked. So that means that there's going to be quite a lot of cross-border trade. North Africa, which Africa is just second before in terms of land space, doesn't have that much borders, the same also as China, but Africa has quite a lot of borders. I'm just wondering where road trains comes in all these conversations about having to have a solid, robust policy framework for transportation of goods, because Africa literally doesn't have quite a lot of rail network like we have in Australia and other parts of the West. So I'm just really wondering, maybe Claude can take this question, since the likes of AGL and Federated Logistics, Ghana's biggest logistics companies, do a lot of export of goods to most of the landlocked countries. Where do we fit road trains in all these rail policy networks?
Thank you very much. I think we'll respond to the road train question. Just that one. Any of you who would want to provide a response? His question is about where we fix rail in all these conversations about infrastructure and transportation across African countries.
Okay, I'll try to give an answer to this. Previously, we said that there are programs there are projects, please, under the PIDA initiatives. And these projects are mainly based to connect regions, connect countries across Africa. I think the subject that you raised is about local movement of people in big cities like Accra or Nairobi or Johannesburg. And these kind of projects have to be handled by the governments, I would say. It's not a NAFTA or a PIDA issue to me. So yes, governments have to handle this kind of issues and find the way that people should move seamlessly in the big cities and mainly in capitals. That's my point.
All right, Stanley.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's important that we create the opportunity and the environment to allow private sector investment into our transportation system. And by transportation system, we're talking intermodal. So all the different facets of transportation are quite important to achieve the goal of efficient movement of goods and people. And again, the way to do this is to get regulation and policy in place that allows for local investment into these areas. Now, the investment has to make sense. There has to be a return on investment, and therefore you need to de-risk the market. You need to provide incentives for local investors to see an opportunity to invest in these areas. Where there are people and there's a need to move them from one place to another, the most efficient way of doing that, once the technology is available, the investors would find a way of providing that service. What government needs to do is to find a way of creating regulation and incentive policies that attract capital and private capital.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have been here discussing how to deliver the single market that we all desire for Africa. And we are clear in our minds that infrastructure is critical to that. The theme under which we are having these discussions, we also agree that it requires investment. We need to connect amongst ourselves, among countries, and we need to integrate. The panel this evening has looked at the aspect of transport and logistics. I think we are in agreement that we require a robust system that facilitates efficiency in transportation and also the logistical support that is needed for the movement of people, goods, and services. Looks like Africa took its eyes off the ball. We started off so well in the shipping sector, in the airline sector, in rails. We haven't expanded as we ought to have. We've been taken by events. There are deficits, but also are there a reawakening, a set of reawakening, which find expression in NAFTA, finds expression in PIDA. And so that offers some hope that at least, as we say in Ghana, Sankofa Yenchi, we are on the path to rediscovery and to rebuild infrastructure that will help us integrate. We've been doing this with Cloud, Johnny, Stanley, and Maro, and we thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.